WSOU 89.5 FM, the loudest rock. I'm Valentino, and I'm joined today with Claudio from Coheed and Cambria. How you doing today, Claudio?
I'm good, Valentino. I'm hanging. Yeah. How about yourself?
I'm doing good. Thank you for asking.
Right on.
Very, very exciting stuff happening in the Coheed and Cambria community right now. New album, Window of the Waking Mind, Vaxis II, coming out May 27th. How are you feeling?
I feel great. I'm very excited for the record. We've been done with it now almost, by the time it comes out, it'll be a year. We'll have been finished writing, recording. My wife and I, we've not too long ago, about a month ago, we finished the novel component that comes in the deluxe. All the art has been collected. It's just it's been an undertaking, and I'm really excited to kind of like let it, walk on out into the world and do what it needs to do. Yeah.
Absolutely. And with a band like Coheed and Cambria, where you're right, the visuals are so important. You got this comic book, this story. When you write music, do you write in like the visual component, or do you write more on the audio side when writing these stories?
It's usually the music will kind of dictate, what happens, in the narrative. I understand, like, where I want to go. Like if I weren't to write any music, I understand, like, okay, I want part 2, 3, 4, and 5 to sort of do this. But, I can't help being inspired by my life, and my life will then, like, when writing the music, will really kind of help curate what's going to happen in the story. So generally I have an understanding of where I'd like to go, but it's hard to keep it anchored that way when, experience really kind of comes into play.
Absolutely. And you talk about the experience. Probably one of my favorite things about Coheed and Cambria is, yes, there's this massive story. It's science fiction. You've got all these different sci-fi elements, but the songs also feel very human and relatable. You know what I mean? And I'm sure it's a very tough line to walk.
No, and you're totally right, Valentino. I mean, that's it. I mean, the concept is, though it's there, it is very much a subjective thing. It's really up to the listener how they want to perceive Coheed and Cambria. Because yes, you can listen to the music and you can get lost in, these visuals and the narrative. But at the end of the day, it's really, this music is written as an outlet for myself to sort of convey my feelings as an adult now, certainly in my life, and, being a part of a family and just the experiences of life itself. So it's like, it's really entirely up to the listener how you choose to digest the material. So yeah, that's why I think, it definitely, yeah, it lives within a science fiction, but it is very much rooted in the realism of my life. So yeah. Yeah, it's up to you.
And I think that that's just so cool that your band has that outlet, because you can just listen to the music and enjoy the music and think it sounds nice. You can dive into the music and pick apart themes of like the human existence and all that cool stuff. Or if you want to go really into it, you can like read the comic books, read the story. It's like you've got layers for how deep you want to go, which is just nice
Right.
to see.
Yeah. And it's funny because, it was all sort of started, 20 years ago, because I just, it was hard for me to sort of confess myself in the songs. Let me create this other world that my life can sort of live inside of. And, that can sort of take the acceptance or the ridicule, and I can go like unharmed as a personality, if that makes any sense. So yeah.
Absolutely. And, I do want to get your opinion on this, because one of the cool things about Coheed and Cambria is you guys have a lot of really awesome sequel albums. You have Good Apollo 1 and 2, The Afterman 1 and 2, Vaxis 1, this new record, May 27th, is Vaxis 2. I kind of want to ask, obviously, all of this lies in an overarching storyline. But specifically, when you're writing a direct sequel, do you almost feel the pressure to like mimic the sounds of the first record, the tone, the lyrics, all that sort of stuff?
Not really. I never sort of get lost in that. There are some conceptual things that I'll throw out there in my mind, because this story is going to a place that I can't reveal at the moment. And there are some, I don't want to say limitations, but there are frames that I've kind of constructed that might dictate how some things get executed in the later records. But for the most part, I just allow the music to be the music, and whether they kind of sound similar just because we're coming from that place. Like right now, Vaxis was done in my Vaxis 1 was done in my 40s, and here I am now, 44. I'm like, this one's done in my 40s as well. So maybe the sound of my 40s is this, so yeah, I try not to limit the music. I want to, that's the expression I want to be like, sort of free and flexible. So yeah.
Absolutely. And I definitely want to get a little opinion on, specifically your vocal element for Vaxis II, because I'm going to be honest, you always have a very, very unique and powerful voice. But I do think that the 3 singles we've heard so far is probably the best you've sounded vocally in your career. And you have like a 20-year-long career. So the 20-year-long career. So that's very impressive. I kind of want a little bit more about, honing your sound vocally, trying out new things and really just getting comfortable in your vocal talent.
So some of the vocals, it's a bit of a collage, because this record we did do during the pandemic, so there was some remote recording. A lot of the songs primarily all of the songs were written in this room, and vocals were delivered in this room. And so I for me, I'm every singer is unique in their own way. And for me, I think the thing is I like to work early in the morning, and it's tough to ask like an outside component or collaborator to do that sort of thing. So for me, it's like I had the freedom to really hit when I was inspired, as opposed to hitting on a clock, if that makes any sense. Right. So there was a little bit of that, like a song like, for example, Liars Club. If I remember correctly, the verses were all vocals that were done here, and then the choruses and probably the second vocal to heighten it, or the second verse, was done out in LA with Zach Cervini. And so things like that. It's like, okay, well, in this room, I can be as intimate as I want because no one's telling me to, hey, we can't hear you. You're not hitting this a certain way. Sorry if I'm getting a little too technical, but so that restraint is like, and I kind of do that because I'm a little like apprehensive to sing loud I live in Brooklyn, so I don't want anyone hearing me. So it's real easy for me to be like sort of reserved. But then when it's time to go out to LA, it's like, oh man, now I really want to belt it because I couldn't do that at home. So maybe there's a little bit of everything. It's yes, the isolation of being in my place and being able to get into the character voice. And I don't mean character in terms of the Amory words or anything, but just the character of the vocal that's supposed to be delivered, getting into that, and then going out to LA and being able to like, oh wow. And maybe the pandemic had something to do with that, because we're all completely isolated, and then finally we get to go leave and maybe cut a few things in a different place, and maybe that just, it was time to let my hair down, so to speak. And I don't know if I'm going off all over the place on you.
No, that makes sense. And, that's something actually I've always wondered. I've never really vocalized this to anybody, but I've wondered this, like musicians in particularly Brooklyn, Manhattan, Queens, any of those areas, it's such a condensed city population. Like, how do you practice without everyone hearing you, or, hearing new Coheed stuff, but it's nice to even hear that you got to space it out.
Yeah. Right. So, I mean, yeah, it's tough. I mean, it was tougher when doing Vaxis 1 because we were in an apartment situation, and right before the pandemic, my wife and I moved into a bigger spot, more room. I can get more gear in here, and it's a little more private, so I can be a little louder. But still, I have a neighbor, and I know they can hear me because I can hear them. So, so yeah. I mean, it's just a little bit of like, getting that courage to just, whatever. I live in the city, that happens. And then, but sometimes, I am 44 years old, and like I have always been introverted by nature. So it's, that's just sometimes really hard to get over. So I'm just quiet and it makes for a different delivery,
Well, anybody that's ever seen Coheed and Cambria live would never guess that you're introverted in any way, shape, or form. You
Right,
really
right.
give it your all. I'll say, actually, I saw you guys for the first time live at Riot Fest this year in 2021. And that was just a cool experience because like it was raining, there was like lightning behind you. You know, you're just giving your all on this guitar, this vocal, just such a cool atmosphere. But you know, like getting yourself into that mindset, that's got to be tough to like when you walk out on stage.
Yeah, I don't know. When we play live, for some reason, it feels like, as much as we're in front of like people and, there's attention, I feel my most comfortable, with a guitar around me and, singing. I mean, maybe that's why my hair is so long, is so I can't really see very much, to be honest, when it's down. But, I feel comfortable up there. I feel comfortable with my friends playing music. It's, it kind of it brings me back to, when I was young and, 13 years old in a basement, just playing and like dreaming about doing the thing I do for a living. Yeah, I just feel my most comfortable on stage. So it's not as difficult. It's really when I'm like out in the world, you know.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah, and then that's true because you know when you're on stage, you got these lights that are right in your face, so you can kind of see the audience, but unless you turn like the house lights on, you're not going to really see every member. Whereas like I'm sure off like with like maybe acoustic sets, you're looking at people more a little bit more closely.
yeah, I mean, I think there's a magic, like you're saying, the lights, the sound, reverberating against walls or projecting out, in amphitheaters, and it's there's something magical, it doesn't feel real. I get to play, not to be corny, I get to play the superhero, if you will, so yeah, there's something about it that I feel at ease.
And the music just lends itself to that, like you hear that opening riff to like welcome home, you're ready. Like it just it sounds incredible. But you have a very exciting tour coming up, Dance Gavin Dance in Mothica. For all of our New Jersey and New York listeners, you guys are coming to the Forest Hills Stadium, Queens, New York on July 30th. Again, July 30th, you guys don't want to miss that. Tell me a little bit about what this tour, like you're looking forward to it, what's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a little, bigger venues for Coheed. We're going to try, we're in the process of like the construction of what, what the production's really going to look like. But, that's even fun to navigate, especially now that, we're sort of easing out of the crisis and everybody is, going out there and touring. So there's a lot of navigating in that. So, I'm expecting something definitely different for fans that have come out and seen Coheed for the past like couple of years. We're really trying to go for something more unique, something unexpected. But we'll see. It's a lot of work. So that's what I've been doing all day today, is prepping for a tour that's months away. Like.
Absolutely. And, I want to ask emotionally, your first show back after this pandemic, how did that feel as an artist? Because, as a fan of live music, our first show back, we'll never forget that. The first time we saw a show after 2.5 years of nothing, from your perspective, do you remember your first show back? What was going through your head?
I don't, so through the situation, through the pandemic, I tried to stay as busy as possible, writing, recording Vaxis, working on some solo stuff, comic books, the companion for Vaxis. Like, I just tried to stay busy. So, I think that, Zach, the bass player, had said, there was a silver lining in all of it because we got a chance to like really kind of hang with our families. And that was really nice, so when we got back, I didn't feel that far from touring, if that makes any sense. It didn't feel like it just felt like we were getting back to work,
Yeah.
if that makes any sense. So yeah, I don't know. It didn't feel that strange to me.
No, that definitely does. Cause it's different, I guess, if you're like, going to a ton of shows, nothing for 2 years, and then going back to shows versus, playing a ton of shows, then continually working on stuff the entire time and then just get back to touring. It's a little less of a kind of break, so to say.
Right. Yeah. Like I kept myself occupied in the realm of music. So, and I was fortunate enough that I got to do that. So,
Yeah. And another thing is, specifically about Coheed and Cambria, we've talked about the album storylines. It's so crucial to, just the lyrics and the comic books. When you're releasing singles for these records, that's got to be a very tedious task because, especially with Coheed and Cambria, you're an album band. I don't like put on Coheed songs. I'll put on records start to finish.
right.
It's tough to, I imagine, like, cherry pick which songs are going to be a taste of the record.
Yeah. It's usually, especially this far into the career, it's usually what excites the objective opinion, right? Like somebody outside of the band, if it's like our, say, A&R representative or the radio fellow or gal, like it's I know what I would think the single would be, but I'm also I'm not an authority on that. And I think Coheed will put out records that will have obvious, ideas of what singles are, but there's so many other things at play. Like, well, especially nowadays, it feels like, is it alternative? Is it active? Is it this or is it that? What sub-compartment does this thing fall under? And Coheed's an oddity. Like, we're not an easy band for most to wrap their heads around. So, I think we were lucky and fortunate with Shoulders, because I think that was like kind of an obvious, like, okay, well, that definitely goes in this compartment here. But but we'll see. I just want to do whatever. I'm going to continue to write records till I die. Like it, and whether there are singles on them or not, I still get to do the thing that's crucial to me, and that's like exercise my feelings, my emotions through song. And if I'm lucky enough to have a single on a record that somebody wants to work, then awesome. And I think this record has that. It does. But again, it depends on what compartment it's going to fit into, or if that makes any sense.
No, that definitely does. Yeah.
You know the game. You know the game, Valentino.
Exactly. And it's you're right. It's all about like almost appealing to the general audience that like maybe doesn't know Coheed and Cambria and then is willing to check out that record and even just hear it start to finish. Because you can hear these 3 songs, but the first thing I thought of when I heard these tracks was like, okay, what comes before and after this?
Right. Okay. Yeah. Cool.
So very excited to check that out.
So you haven't heard the record yet?
I have not heard the record yet. No, I'm in for a total surprise. I'm very excited.
Well, yeah.
Oh yeah. And then another thing I'm very excited to talk with you about. This is, huge news for Coheed and Cambria. 20 years of Second Stage, your first record. How does that feel to just like I don't know, like, did you ever think that this record, like 20 years on, you'd still be going strong?
It's the thing we all dreamed of. It's so I want to say, yeah, I was dreaming that I'd be sitting here with you today, right? Like 20 years into my career, someone still cares. Yeah, I mean, but thinking of myself then at 20 years old and like us getting in a van and, it breaking down and us, very green to the touring life and being in a real rock band. There were ups and downs like any, but we persevered and we continued. And I'm really grateful and proud of all of the history, that we have behind us, regardless of the bad and good. It makes us who we are. And it's very exciting to say that, we've been doing it, strong for those 20 years. And Second Stage, it's a lot of fun to go back and listen to, and remember like the 4 guys, in a fella's home studio, taking the microphone and running down the stairs to get the grandfather clock to sample onto, Time Consumer, and just being so thrilled and not even knowing at that time that we were making a record. We thought we were making demos to get a deal. But yeah, man, it's really special, and I'm very grateful, and I definitely am more grateful now in my life than I have ever been. Because sometimes, coming up, it's hard to look past the difficult, um, the hurdles that are presented in front of you when you're coming up. But now we get to look down at all the work that we did, and it just feels good.
And it's just so interesting to hear that, like, you first started out, you're just like, I'm gonna write a few demos, and now July 30th, you're playing a stadium in Queens, like a stadium, like that's just insane to even think about. It's just so cool. And another thing that's like really awesome about you guys, that just shows the originality of Coheed and Cambria, is you don't really have like a genre that we can like pinhole you in. You know what I mean? Like, you can tour with Slipknot and Taking Back Sunday, and neither of those things are out of place.
Right,
you know
right.
and that's just really cool to even just have a band like that is just so just genre fluid, and has been genre fluid for so long. I like, maybe in the last recent 5-6 years, the rock scene has gotten a little bit easier with like mixing different genres. But, from day one, you guys were just really just writing songs you wanted to write. And I think that's just a really cool thing that, is paying off.
Yeah, I agree. Ever since I was a kid, I never wanted to be categorized as, I was so open to everything. It wasn't like I didn't set out to be in a band because I wanted to be in like a punk band or a metal band. Like, I was so into and absorbing so much stuff that I just wanted to play music. I wanted to write songs, and without that sort of limitation. And yeah, and that's what we did, and we're a bunch of weirdos now.
And it is just very refreshing, because I know I've talked about this in a few interviews before. I've talked about it on air. I love rock. Rock is like my favorite genre through and through. I'm a rock. I'm a metalhead. I love it all. But rock is so focused on like, that's not hardcore. That's post-hardcore. That's not metal. That's metalcore. It's just like,
Right.
It's just so refreshing to even just Coheed and Cambria fans. Like, your fans don't care about it. They just like the music, like, which is just so great to, really great to see.
Yeah. I think, looking back 20 years, and I think of what Coheed is, what Coheed, all the sort of facets and dimensions of Coheed, whether it's the exploration into all types of music in terms of, being that kind of diverse, or the comics, or, all of that. I really think that we've created more of a culture outside of just being a rock and roll band. Like, there's more that you can get into with what we do than, say, just that one thing that's like, we are now categorized, and that's it. So I don't know if that makes any sense.
No, it absolutely does. And, it's just very, very awesome to hear. I got one more question for you today. First off, I wanted to thank you so much for taking time out of your day to talk with us at WSOU. We're playing the 3 singles nonstop. We're loving the new records. So thank you again. Again, all of our New Jersey, New York listeners, I'll say it one more time so you guys don't forget. July 30th, Forest Hill Stadium, Queens, New York. You guys don't want to miss that. All 3 of those bands are nuts. Like we have Dance Gavin Dance in the system. We love them too. So it's going to be a good show. Thank you again for joining us.
Oh, absolutely, Valentino. Thank you for having us.
Of course, of course. So my last question is on a little bit more of a somber note. It's very, very sad to hear about the tragic passing of Taylor Hawkins. It is just absolutely devastating, and there are really like no words to describe this. I kind of wanted to get like your opinion. Obviously, he drummed on No World Tomorrow. That's, you guys had a strong musical relationship with him, and personal relationship. Like, what was your thoughts on the matter?
I just remember, Taylor was such a beautiful spirit. I mean, at that time in Coheed's career, we had lost 2 of our members to sort of chemical dependency. One actually returned at the time, but he really just brought a spirit and an energy that I think our band needed, to kind of get us into that record and perform. And, I think it's a huge, huge loss. He was a beautiful person. So much fun to be around. You know, we didn't really continue our friendship after that record, but in that time, you know, he was what we needed. So
Yeah, and it's just so nice to even see that, like, years later, some people cite that as their favorite Coheed record, and his legacy is living on and in the Coheed scene, as well as all the incredible Foo Fighter stuff and all the other stuff he's done. The list just goes on and on.
yeah, I mean, you know, we'll never forget him for the help and friendship he gave us at that time.
Absolutely. Well, again, one more time, I wanted to thank you so much for talking to me today. Again, taking time out of your day. You know, for all of our New Jersey, New York listeners, you guys are coming to Queens, and new album May 27th. Thank you again, Claudio. I really appreciate it.
Oh, you got it, Valentino. Thank you.